So now, please welcome the official, non-official, non-sponsor of the Savannah Bananas, but a big fan. Please welcome John Fletcher.
Welcome to another edition of 15 on Fridays with Fletch. I'm John Fletcher. Today's guest is a world-renowned foodie and also the salsa innovator, Doug Renfro. He's the third generation Renfro, and he's the president of Renfro Foods in Fort Worth. He works alongside his cousins, Becky and James. He recently received the Specialty Food Association's Lifetime Achievement Award, and that's a big deal in the food industry. The Renfro Foods website shares that in high school, Doug played the saxophone, the piano, and the marching xylophone. Marching xylophone? Oh my gosh, we'll have to hear about that. He advanced to the state competition, but sadly, as an adult, he only plays the kazoo. Any comments so far, Doug?
Yeah, a couple. They didn't have the good sense early on when they changed high school marching bands from military to what they call corps style, where they make designs and things that after about 2 years, they realized it's probably not good to carry an 80 to 100-pound mallet thing around you when you march. So now they just put them on the sidelines and they get to stand up and play. But I actually had to march around. The good news is they had no music for that position, so I got to make up all my own parts.
Okay, that's great. So you were playing solo the whole time. That's
In my
cool.
mind.
So tell us about your entrepreneurial spirit has led you to be a leader in the salsa industry. Where is Renfro Foods ranked in the overall salsa category?
There are over 600 brands tracked in the US, believe it or not, of salsa. We're currently number 8, I believe. And I tell people if we doubled, we'd be number 8. So don't get too excited. The big ones are big. But as you know, we also not, I can't name names, but we also manufacture salsa for dozens of other companies. Since we have a factory, we want to run as much through it as we can.
Right. I believe, as you were telling me a while back, about half of what you do is for other people's names or for food service.
Right. Yeah, it's closer to 2/3 now. That part's been growing nicely. And what's nice about it is we don't have to pay the marketing and advertising for those brands.
That's great. You don't have to pay the shelf space either. So that's
Right.
beautiful. And you're the number one gourmet salsa. Tell us about
Right.
that.
Well, we're the largest independent that's still family owned, which I think is cool. And you're correct. When I came back from corporate life 33 years ago or so, we had mild, medium, and hot picante and green taco sauce. And that was our entire Tex-Mex platform offering. And we were kind of stymied in trying to expand. So we came out with black bean and habanero, which back then was super exotic. And we go to the buyers and say, I know you have a million sauces, but you don't have variety at an everyday price. I don't mean a gourmet store fancy price where people are going to use it for window dressing and never actually eat it. And they started saying that they liked what we had and it was a good idea, which we were making it up. So that was nice. Then we eventually expanded into peach, chipotle, corn, tequila, craft beer. So we've gotten to be known in the industry as flavor innovators. And many other companies come to us now, large companies, and ask us, what should we do with salsa? And we create things for them. We can work with them. As long as we get paid, we're good.
That's great. And one of my right here is mango habanero salsa. Tell us where that fits in the spectrum.
That is actually now number 1 of the Renfro items. Part of my job, I tell people I'm cursed to have to eat at the nicest restaurants in the nation to see what condiment trends are. And I'll see things that we can't come out with for 5 years. So I had a mango habanero chutney on halibut at a white tablecloth restaurant a million years ago and sort of filed it away. That was a really good profile. About 5 years later, we came out with our mango habanero salsa, which was the first such combination on the general market. Now, of course, it's everywhere. But even some of the family didn't think it was a good idea. And thankfully, it was. It was very delicious. And I always point out, by the way, most of my ideas are bad. Just, you get lucky every once in a while with a good one.
Well, so tell us about the exploding salsa that you had in the research lab.
I was bean dip. I want to clarify.
Okay.
We had a huge customer who wanted to do bean dip, and my dad and my uncle had 50 years experience, but they had 0 years experience with bean dip. So I was making it up using a spice blend recipe from a vendor. And the first jar, I thought I made it. The next day I came in, my dad pointed to the ceiling and the lid was up there because it had blown up overnight. And that's how we found out the pH was way different on bean dip, the acidity. With salsa and relish, you didn't have to worry. With bean dip and cheese sauces, as we later got to be experts on, you have to acidify it way more than you would a naturally acidic item. And it's like the bean dip and cheese sauce you would make at home. Those would be illegal to put in a jar on the shelf because it would grow stuff, to be technical.
Well, and also you do some fun things at trade shows. Tell us about your wearing your Royal Canadian Mountie outfit.
Well, we were trying to make a name for ourselves in Canada to really grow. So I rented a Canadian Mountie costume in Fort Worth and flew that thing all the way to Canada and dressed up well like a Mountie. I mean, it took forever to put it on. It was really hot. But everyone who walked in the show, they said, you got to see the moron from Texas wearing this Canadian Mountie costume. And we got vendor of the show, and everything with me is about selling more and more jar. And nobody wants to talk about the short, bald guy. It's about putting the brand in their face. And it was really good. We made our biggest sale ever to a retailer in Canada. I did find out at the end of the show, it's a felony to dress like a Mountie. So I've never done that again, but it was a good one show.
Oh, that's incredible. So we talked about mango habanero is number one. Give us the top five.
Mango habanero, and it barely passed habanero, which was one of my first two items when they threw R&D at me a million years ago. And then and habanero is about 5 times hotter than mango. So I eat mango habanero at home personally all the time. My taste buds stop way below some of the hotter stuff. Our number 3 is green, which is a jalapeno based, then peach, which is super mild, and then the ghost pepper, which is obviously very hot. So it's an interesting mix there. Those 5 are probably half of our Renfro sales.
Where does the Carolina Reaper fit in? That's obviously the hottest of the hottest.
Yeah, it's funny. It's at the very bottom for grocery channels, but it's number 1 or 2 on online channels because people who want it really want it. They don't care what it costs, and the only way for them to find it is normally to buy it from our website, Amazon, Walmart.com, something like that. And so it's funny. It's either number 1 or number 30, depending on which channel you're talking about.
Well, and I've seen people on YouTube doing some crazy things with some of your hottest flavors. Tell us about those.
Yeah, what's fun is if you go to YouTube, it's fun and a little scary. If you go to YouTube and put in Renfro ghost pepper, Renfro habanero, pick one. There are all these videos of people like betting their friend $200 they can't drink the whole jar and not have any milk in between, or all kinds of things that we had nothing to do with, but they're funny. There's one, I can't remember if it's Scottish or Irish, but I think maybe it's Scottish people trying Mrs. Renfro salsas, and they progressively go from peach to medium to green to end up with Carolina Reaper. And there's a lot of profanity, a lot of funny accents, and people turning red. But great marketing, fun. We don't know who they are. We never had anything to do with it. But that's where social media, I've always said, is a great leveling of the playing field for little companies like us against the big people.
Well, and also you engage so well. There, y'all have videos where you and Becky are making recipes. Tell us about a little bit of your social media.
We use an ad agency to manage the official channels, but they work closely with us and see what we do personally. And you're right, we've done things over time where Becky and James and I are cooking and throwing cheese at each other, and showing how to use a whole jar of the product instead of a teaspoon with something. And I'm always willing to do every podcast or public event, anything that might sell one more jar. So one of our mutual friends was trying to get a reality show going, and she brought a chef to my home. They looked through the fridge, picked some things, and made an entree with witty repartee and commentary about our company. And it's still out there. Things on the internet never die. It's interesting.
Tell us about some product placement that you've had. I believe Spy Kids was that the first one?
Yeah, first, if it wasn't the first, it was the first one that mattered. And we will give salsa away all day long to movie and TV sets, knowing most of the time we're just feeding the film crew, and that's fine, because if they start eating our product weekly for the rest of their natural lives, that's good. But in this case, it was somebody we'd never heard of, Austin, Texas, a director no one had ever heard of, had no budget, probably hired a kid in high school or college to get a bunch of food to stick in the safe house scene cabinet. And you could tell that person loved us because every other jar in the photo in that scene of the movie is a fake or no label, except 3 jars of Mrs. Renfro's lovingly positioned toward the camera. And it was a beautiful thing. The film became $100 million blockbuster and a franchise. We asked if we could be in the second the sequel, the second film, and they said that would be a $50,000 slotting fee, and we are not in the sequel.
That's it. So tell us, I know you are a Shameless promoter. So tell me one more fun thing that you've done that really got some attention. I mean, obviously being the vendor of the show in Canada, that's a great example from the wearing the uniform.
Well, this time next week, we'll be at the Fancy Food Show in New York. And one thing I do is we have these nice inflatable jars. They're about 3 feet tall. And we always have one at the booth. Well, you don't want to ship it full of air, obviously, it's huge. So they're about this big when you ship them. And I personally will blow that thing up during setup day, walking around, and people point at me and laugh and look and maybe film me because I look like I might die as you're blowing up this giant inflatable jar. But again, if they're talking about our brand, they're looking at a big representation of the jar. I'm happy to look stupid all day long if it'll just sell a little bit more.
And you're a member of the Texas Department of Agriculture's Go Texan program, and you've received funding from them to help promote. Tell us about, I know you like to use local vendors whenever you possibly can.
We do. We often demo with some chips that are made in Las Colinas, social chips. Our fresh vegetables that we use all come out of a family business in Haltom City that their late father went to high school with my late uncle. You know, when we can, we just did a collab with Best Made Pickles, a 100-year-old company about a mile from us. Their great grandparents knew my grandparents. You know, you want to do as much of that as you can. And obviously I want to point out to anyone that John Fletcher is the one that helped us get funds from the Texas Agriculture Department. I'm way too lazy and ignorant. The dealing with the government requires a lot of detail and box checking, and you were outstanding and still are at it. We appreciate that, by the way.
You bet. Well, thank you. So tell us about when we go to the grocery store, you're competing with yourself some. So tell us about that.
There's a big box retailer that I went into a few years ago, and we had three facings. A facing is one, you know, looking at it head on, you can see there may be 4 or 5 behind it, but it's called a facing. And there were 3 facings of Renfro items, which was cool, but there were 23 facings of items that we make, which was just fine with me. Or we'll be on the bottom shelf somewhere, but there's an end cap that features another brand, which we make. So we run right now 195 jars a minute. We need a lot of jars to go through there to pay for all that. And we're also doing 1 and 5 gallon jugs of food service. You know, we make barbecue sauces for some restaurants. We make all sorts of sauces I can't talk about. But the key is that when you own a factory, you need to put a bunch of stuff through it. If you don't own a factory, you can't afford a factory. So we probably get a call every 12 minutes, it seems like, of somebody wanting us to make things for them. 99% of the time, it doesn't work out for whatever reason. But when it does, it's very happy day.
Okay, take 60 seconds to tell us about judging at Terlingua. That's like the coolest event or hottest event.
My late uncle had gotten into chili cooking in probably the 70s or 80s, and he actually won the state championship for Colorado and Oklahoma. And he would go with a bunch of guys to Terlingua, and he started sponsoring the salsa contest because they needed more things to do than just cook chili. I told my wife years ago, I'm going to go one time to make my uncle happy. And apparently when I got home, I said it next year. And now my cousin James and I have been probably 15 times, and we're such a sponsor that I have inflatable jars are all over the place, all their local contests around the nation. But you're right, it's intimidating because there'll be 300 entries of people who've worked all year just to have the right to be there. And I'll get to judge at the head table as a sponsor, and they've eliminated 300 down to 150, down to 80, down to 60. And I'm tasting the final 22 with the local sheriff and different people. And it's not like they don't win a car and a trip to Europe. It's more of a pride thing. But it's a little intimidating, but Big Bend is so fabulously beautiful that you are so happy to be down there and looking at the arroyos and plateaus and mountains.
That's great. Well, you've been watching 15 on Fridays with Fletch with Doug Renfro. Here's his salsa right here. There's the mango habanero. And so he's the president of Renfro Foods in Fort Worth. Doug, I appreciate you coming on and saying some nice words. Of course, I'll take the lifetime supply of Mrs. Renfro's salsas. But join me next week for 15 on Fridays with Fletch. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for letting me play.